Welcome to the 2018-2019 Canes B-ball season preview. I'm Phil. I'm here with Kyle, who is, I believe, new to Canes Insight. Correct, Kyle?
New and old at the same time. I wrote for a little while when I was in high school, but just got done with college, so I'm getting back into it.
There you go. So me and him, we're going to break down the Miami Hurricane season coming up. We had Coach L's big announcements at Media Day. We have the excitement of Zach Johnson coming to the team, Anthony Mack, who could be a possible eighth man. But before we get into all of that, just a couple words from sponsors. First, we have great news this week out of Caneswear. The classic starter jackets you know and love are back. Brand new shipment is in, and a whole bunch are in stock. Green, orange, white, black. The most popular seems to be green, just like last time. These won't last long. They're selling like hotcakes. So if you haven't already, get your starter jacket and all your Hurricanes gear at Caneswear on University Drive in the Arrowhead Shopping Center in Davie, or at the online store at caneswear.com. And I have to tell you about our friends at Sala, Astorita & Cox, LLC, a boutique law firm focusing on white-collar criminal defense and security matters. They've been featured and recognized in Florida Super Lawyers as well as Florida Legal Elite. And the partners formerly worked in the U.S. Attorney's Office and the SEC. Sala, Astorita & Cox, attorneys at law. You can visit their website at salalaw.com. Call their toll-free number, 1-888-SEC-ATTY. So college basketball season is about to kick off. The Canes start their season on November 9th. Finally, we can get the taste out of our mouths of the heartbreak that was last year's NCAA tournament.
Oh, man.
Yeah, what were your feelings on that Loyola Chicago, that matchup? Because I called that beforehand and said this is going to be brutal if we have to play this team, and sure enough, we get them.
You know, our team was like, our leaders on our team are young, and both Bruce Brown and Lonnie Walker. And then with Bruce's injury, that definitely conflated things as well, too. And I don't think the expectations for our team were so high, and then injuries happened, and I don't think the chemistry was able to develop right away. So that hurt our team going into the tournament. But with this team, and especially Coach L saying he wants to keep seven men in the rotation, I think that'll allow for a lot more continuity, and that'll allow for these guys to play together easily.
Yeah, that was the big thing last year, is Bruce Brown getting injured. And it's pretty crazy that we still got a 6th seed, even though we played most of the ACC without Bruce Brown. And Lonnie Walker, he was great, and he missed that one free throw in that game in the NCAA tournament. God. It was a killer. But we had him, so we lose Walker, we lose Brown, but really, even though we lose Bruce Brown, who was a huge asset to this team last year and the year before, because he wasn't there for so much of last year, I feel like a lot of these younger players like Chris Likes and, Abuka Azundu and Vasiljevic, who's now older, and DeJuan Huell, who's now DeJuan Hernandez, they've gotten used to playing together without having Bruce Brown there. And Walker missing is obviously a huge thing, but they have played most of the season without Bruce Brown.
Exactly. So you have all that returning chemistry, and then you add a guy like Zach Johnson. And for people who don't know, Zach Johnson and DeJuan Huell, now DeJuan Hernandez, went to the same school together, and they won state titles, I believe, 1 or 2 times. Zach was a senior when DeJuan was a sophomore. So now we're just adding another good piece of chemistry and cohesiveness into that team.
Yeah, and that's a great point. Getting Zach Johnson is such a big transfer for us. I mean, having him come into the lineup here and coming from Florida Gulf Coast, he's, Coach L seems really, really high on him. He was saying that Johnson, being a major need after Walker and Brown turned pro, and he's going to be great assisting Chris Likes for sure.
Yeah. So. And when Johnson was at Norland, and even through high school and early in middle school, like on the AAU scene, he was seen as a kind of a smaller guard, but he was a combo guard. He could play the 1 or the 2, and he's always been a big body, much like Bruce Brown. He could dunk. He caught alley-oops when we played against him in high school. Very big body, and he plays hard defense, and he's someone who plays to the whistle, isn't afraid to jump on the floor, and that'll be great to add this veteran leadership to this team as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And Coach L says he's going to be a major contributor. He's currently sitting as the 6th man. So, Likes and Vasiljevic are probably going to be starting over him at the beginning of the season. But as we saw last year, those rotations change up all the time. Mm-hmm. What I'm curious about with this, coming into this season, so we were predicted 10th in the ACC preseason media poll. That's where the Canes are at. only ahead of Louisville, Boston College, Georgia Tech, Wake, and Pitt. So I really do think 10th is kind of low. I know we lose Brown and I know we lose Walker, but to put all the way down at 10th place, I feel like there's a lot of upside to this Miami team. I think the addition of Johnson, I think people are kind of underestimating that a little bit right
now. And remember, Coach L's teams always perform best when they're underestimated. Mm-hmm. And Coach L is such a great coach that our recruiting rankings or whatever it may be may not stack up with the rest of the ACC, but people underestimate his development and his commitment to strength and conditioning. And Coach L is someone who grew up in the Northeast and such a big basketball culture up there, and he brings it down to Miami, and he's able to refine guys like DeJuan Hernandez. And I actually have a friend that plays on Barry basketball. Shout out to David Moya, and he's been playing against DeJuan for a very, very long time. And he says, compared to last year and compared to everything before, DeJuan looks like he's NBA ready now. He's taken a big step, taken a lot more mid-range jumpers, taken a lot more threes, and he's improved his handle and added to his frame. So I expect DeJuan not only to be the leader of this team, but someone who wants to go to the NBA, believes he's ready for the NBA, and he's going to show that off on the court this year.
Yeah, because DeJuan was somebody who had tried to go into the combine last year and was threatening to be in the NBA draft. And then, he wasn't going to get drafted. I think everybody expected that. But, Miami just had their first exhibition game against Barry. I forget what the date was, but they won it 91-61. Yeah. And it's good to hear that DeJuan is, maybe the name change is all he needed. Maybe that's it.
Sometimes you just got to give yourself a little reminder, and that's all he needed to improve on himself.
That's it. I mean, because he was good. He's always been good, and it's just a matter of getting him to play more consistently. And I think that was always the thing that was hurting is there was never a game really last year where him and Azundu were both having a good game.
Yeah.
And it was always one or the other, and that seemed to really hurt the Canes. And last year, we were shooting Coach L wanted 8 out of 18 threes to go in. And now this season, he's saying he wants 25 threes per game.
Exactly. So that's a major step up as well. And one underestimated part about Coach L's offense is it's so guard-oriented. And last year with Lonnie Walker and Bruce Brown, those guys were the vocal point throughout practice in the preseason and early on. And then Bruce's injury happens, and then you kind of have to shift your whole offense. You have to shift your identity. Chris Like emerges later on in the year. You have to shift your whole identity. Now, we have 7 guys who are going to be the main players. And when you look at our ball handlers, our 2 main ball handlers are going to be Zach and Chris. And Zach has played with DeJuan for over 6 years, and Chris and DeJuan have also developed a good chemistry together. So I really believe that'll help DeJuan's development this year, and we'll be able to see him take off.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think that's something, Chris Likes is so fast with the ball, and he was great last year, but being a freshman and coming in, it's always going to be a tough situation, especially with how small Chris Likes is on the court. But I think now that he has a year under his belt, I think that you're just going to see such a different player coming into this season. And look, it looks like right here, what is it? DJ Vasiljevic lost 20 pounds coming into this season. And so if Vasiljevic is firing on all cylinders like we were hoping he would have done last year, which he was inconsistent again, and if he's shooting well and Likes with his ball handling and Zach Johnson with his ball handling, this is going to open up the front court a lot for the big guys in Hernandez and Azundu.
Exactly. And you look at, we shot 10 for 21 against Barry in the exhibition game, and Coach L wants to continue that type of consistency. And we also have guys where everyone's playing his role. Anthony Lawrence had 8 assists in that game. And Anthony Lawrence he's a guy not so much like Draymond Green in that he'll play the center position, but Anthony Lawrence could switch onto 1 through 4, and he's going to be someone who will be a point forward, and he's always going to be passing the ball and looking for the open man and making the right plays. And his IQ matched with the experience of Likes coming into his second year. And Likes was someone who, you get into the bright lights and you realize, okay, I'm better than a lot of these guys. I could really play with a lot of these guys. And he goes 110 miles per hour, and that forces mistakes. Now the game is slowed down, and he realizes, all right, now I know when to go 110 miles per hour. Now I know when to go 80 miles per hour, and I know how to mix that up, and I know when I need to find my teammates and how to run this offense better.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a good point bringing up Anthony Lawrence. And this will probably be this entire podcast will probably have the theme of consistency, because Anthony Lawrence was another one. He had some great games, and then he had some games where you just sat there and shook your head because you couldn't figure out what he was doing.
Mhm.
And so he's somebody, and I look for the improvement of Sam Wardenberg as well.
Yeah.
How is he going to be in his second year now? And it was him last year, right, who decided to take a step back and instead of taking a step out, which allowed for Loyola Chicago to hit the 3-pointer to send them into the next round. So he that's like the last play he had all season, and now that's what's been hanging over his head. So I'm curious to see how he's going to come into his own in his second season. And, we have Anthony Mack, who you've talked about a little bit, and it looks like Coach L wants him to have to work his way into the rotation. But this is another guy, first-year transfer, who gets to play in his first year.
Yeah, and what's good, again, is talking about team chemistry and cohesiveness and coherency. Deng and Anthony Mack both were on the same high school team at Blair Academy Prep in New Jersey. So both of them are also redshirt freshmen, and they'll be able to go through this process of, we have to earn our spot. Just because we were given this opportunity to play at the University of Miami doesn't mean that we're entitled to being in the rotation yet. So as redshirt freshmen, we've seen the college game. We know what it's taken care of. But right now, there are 7 guys who are better than us. So you have those two guys that are earning their way into the rotation, and we have 7 guys who are going to be playing 20 to 30 minutes every single game, which I think will be able to give our team a nice consistency. And Anthony Mack is someone who, throughout the AAU scene in the Northeast and even at Wyoming, while he wasn't on playing, he was known as a scorer. He scored 1,500 points in high school as well. So now he's going to figure out, how do I get my buckets against people who are just as good as me? How do I simplify the game where I don't need to take 6 dribbles to get an open mid-range pull-up. I need to take 3 dribbles, and I need to be more efficient. And once he figures that out, it'll be easier for him to become our 8th man and get in our rotation.
Yeah, and I think Anthony Mack has an easier time getting in than Deng Gok, because
I agree.
We've already seen Rodney Miller's been redshirted this year. He's the 7-foot junior. They're redshirting him because he's going to be behind DeJuan Hernandez and Ebuka Azundu. And Deng fits the same role as Azundu and Hernandez, where it's the big man down low. Deng is 6'10", Azundu's 6'10", Hernandez is 6'11". I still can't get used to calling him Hernandez. I gotta get that in my head. I have to keep looking at the sheet. I want to say Huel every time, but so I think Deng has a harder time getting into this rotation. I think he can, especially if somebody starts getting in foul trouble or early in this season. The schedule is very easy. So I could see maybe him getting a little playing time there. But I think Anthony Mack is somebody who's going to work his way in really no matter what. I think that you're going to see him on the court as an 8th man, probably in December, even as early as maybe when they go to the Wooden Legacy out here in Fullerton, California.
Yeah, and I agree. And especially with Anthony Lawrence not being so on. Anthony Lawrence gets a lot of easy buckets. He'll finish at the rim. He'll hit the open jumpers. But Anthony Lawrence isn't someone who's going to be creating a lot of his own shots. He'll be getting a lot of assisted shots and making a lot of assists on his own. So we need someone off the bench besides Zach Johnson that can score from the guard or the wing position. So it's imperative that Anthony Mack will be able to become that 8th man and give relief to both DJ and Anthony Lawrence.
Yeah, and I think that there's, the more we talk about this, there's just so many weapons on this team. And I think that when you watch what Miami did last year and how they were still able to get a 6 seed in the tournament, and they lost to an 11 seed, but they lost to a Final Four 11 seed who really played really great in that Final Four game until they were in the lead with 10 minutes left and didn't know what they were doing. They were confused as to why they were in the lead. So I know that was disappointing, but at the same time, I look at this team and what they were able to accomplish last year without Bruce Brown, and obviously losing Lonnie Walker is huge. But the more we talk about this, the more you start to realize there's a lot of places to fill in these gaps. And it seems like a lot of the players have made the improvements necessary in order to, DeJuan Hernandez, so that he can go pro. And it seems like, Chris Likes, I can't even imagine what he's going to be able to do in his second year, because, in his first year, nobody was expecting that much out of him. And then he's starting halfway through the year.
Exactly. And a lot of those improvements could also be pointed to the consistent work with Remy, who's also Dwayne Wade's trainer, and he trains a lot of high school players, and NBA players come down like Andre Drummond and whole bunch of other guys come here in the summer, and they work with Remy Workouts. That's his Instagram handle. And he also trains at UM. So just that consistency to being committed to Remy, committed to Coach L's off-season programs, and wanting to get better, because what they see is they want to go pro with basketball and they want this to be their future. And I think, the first 2 years you come in, you're a highly rated recruit, you're one of the best players. Chris Likes, top 50 player, Jawan Hernandez, top 50 player, and you think it's going to be easy. You think you're going to be Kentucky. You think I'm not going to Kentucky, but I'm going to UM. So I'll be able to come in my first year, my first 2 years, and I'll be out of here and be into the league. And then you realize it's a little bit tougher. So then these kids in their third year and their fourth year, they really get committed to their program. And, Zach Johnson, like what he's been able to do and grow as a player from when I saw him his senior year in high school to now is just a major improvement. And I really expect him to take off this year. And I wouldn't be surprised if he works his way into the starting lineup at some point later on in the year.
Yeah, absolutely. I would not be surprised at all. And I would think that he might be starting over DJ at some point, because DJ to me feels like more of a sixth man. He feels like the guy who comes off the bench, he starts knocking down the shots, and he provides that spark when you need points and you need them fast. And I think that's a better role for him anyway. And I think Zach Johnson starting the game, I mean, you have Chris Likes, Zach Johnson, Hernandez, Azundu, and who do you think would be the fifth starter? Probably Lawrence.
Yeah, definitely Lawrence.
Definitely Lawrence.
Lawrence is also, I could see two possible lineups. I could see Zach coming in for DJ, or I could see Zach coming in for Sam and have Lawrence going to the 4 because his length. And if you put Lawrence at the 4 and you have those 3 guards, and Lawrence is kind of a hybrid wing slash big man, we'd just be. I could see us switching a lot on defense if we want to go that route and trying to trap or out athleticize some of the weaker teams that we play.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And so speaking of the weaker teams, we might as well jump into the schedule here, because even though Miami was projected 10th in the media poll before the season for the ACC, they got votes in the coaches poll. They got votes in the AP poll. They're not ranked in either of them. Ken Pom has them the highest at number 21, actually ahead of Virginia Tech, who all of the other polls have them behind. You look at Miami's schedule, and there's no reason. And of course, Miami always does this to us. If you're a Miami Hurricanes basketball fan, there's always a loss in there that is so mind blowing. Last year it was New Mexico State, and it's just so mind blowing. But you look at this schedule, and it's another really easy schedule, which is always something that is frustrating once the bubble talk starts coming up. But it's nice because normally at least you get you into the ranking by the time ACC play rolls around.
Exactly. And on the other hand, with Miami, you know that we're going to upset one of these blue blood teams. You just know, it's coming. It's coming, and I'm very excited for that as well too.
Yeah, that's what Miami does. It seems like every year. Last year they beat UNC on Jaquan Newton's crazy buzzer beater on senior night. Take that right out of Jewel Berry's hands. And all the years when we beat Duke, it seems like that's something we always do. It's, can we get rid of those dumb losses? I mean, New Mexico State last year we lost to Georgia Tech, who you should never lose. It was a home game against Georgia Tech that we lost, and the ACC is really, really, really good this year. I mean, Duke is going to be incredible as always. Virginia coming back after being the first number 1 seed to lose to a 16 seed. They're going to have something to prove. North Carolina, Syracuse, Virginia Tech, even Clemson, and Florida State last year. I mean, Florida State went all the way to the Elite Eight. So I look at this ACC, and there's obviously going to be a lot of wins within the ACC. But when you look at that non-conference strength of schedule, I mean, you start off the season with Lehigh, Stephen F. Austin, Bethune-Cookman, and then you go to the tournament, the Wooden Legacy, where you start off against LaSalle, and probably the best team you would play there, I guess, would be Seton Hall if you get to the final. I don't know much about Northwestern this year, but I'm assuming that they've kind of gone back to their old Northwestern ways. Yeah,
I agree. And so with all that in mind, as long as we take care of our out-of-conference schedule and we get the 8 wins or the 10 wins in our, I think it's like 16. There's 16 games in the ACC schedule.
Yeah, I believe so.
If we get our 8 to 10 wins in the ACC play, as long as we take care of our out of conference business, we'll make it to the tournament. And then once we make it to the tournament, the rest is in our hands.
Yeah, and it's actually 18 games in the
18. Okay.
Yeah, it's 18. But I mean, yeah, you look at the schedule once you hit conference, and you have Florida State, who's ranked preseason, UNC ranked preseason, Syracuse, Virginia Tech, Virginia, North Carolina, Clemson, Duke. Those are all teams that are ranked in the preseason, and obviously one of them will probably falter. That always seems to happen.
Florida State still has Leonard Hamilton coaching, so that always works in our favor.
Yeah, you just never know. Somehow he's gotten them to an Elite Eight, and we haven't gotten any of our teams to an Elite Eight.
He's recruiting like unbelievable, but he's still Leonard Hamilton at the end of the day. So
yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, so I just hope that this is finally a season where you don't have that head scratcher. I mean, remember the year we lost to Eastern Kentucky by 28 points at home, and that was just mind blowing.
That's brutal.
It's like Larrañaga does such a great job getting these guys up for the big games. And I like that he starts off a little bit easier. As you see with our football team this year, you never want to start off with a really hard game the first game because then you lose. And then it's kind of like, oh, well, look what happened when they played them. And it's the first game of the season. Nobody's
momentum skilled. And unfortunately for our football program, we got Alabama, we got Florida, we have Michigan State. We have a bunch of hard openers coming up.
Yeah, exactly. And for the basketball team, our opener this year is against Lehigh, which I'm honestly not concerned. I mean, I know that they knocked off Duke a couple of years ago in the tournament. It's always nice to throw that in there when you can. But this is a Lehigh team that isn't intimidating at all, out of the Patriot League. So this is a game Miami should win. And this is, the one thing that I will say is if you're going to lose Lonnie Walker, you're going to lose Jaquan Newton, you're going to lose Bruce Brown, you might as well start the season off by letting these guys get to play a little bit. I just wish that there was at least one ranked opponent on that schedule that you went out and maybe found a Big Ten team other than Rutgers. I mean, Rutgers, I'm a New Jersey guy. Rutgers is always garbage, which is crazy considering North Jersey is so good at basketball. It just makes no sense. But, you would hope that there was somebody else in there that maybe you could take on. But it looks like Seton Hall's, if everything goes right in that Wooden Legacy, it seems like Seton Hall's probably going to be the best team that we end up playing in the non-conference.
Yeah. And that makes it, and it's also that trap because these teams, we're not playing a ranked team. Like you said, we don't have a Big Ten team. We don't have a strong Big 12 team or anything like that. It's sometimes that could lead these kids to thinking we could just take it easy, run there and win. And then the Eastern Kentucky game happens and we lose by 28.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that seems to happen all the time. So, but hopefully, with the leadership on this team, but even the team with Shane Larkin lost. Who did they lose to? I forget who they lost to that year. But even they lost a mind blowing. Was it Gulf Coast? It was Gulf Coast. They lost.
Yeah,
to Gulf Coast.
It was Gulf Coast. Was that Dunk City year or was that?
It was the Dunk City year, but I think it was still Gulf Coast in November.
Yeah, and those losses will happen. But I think with our team, you have a lot of specialists. You have a guy like DJ who's basically our 6'3" Joe Ingles, and he's just going to be raining it from three. He'll probably attempt 6 to 8 threes every single game. You have Anthony Lawrence, who'll be a point forward. And guys on this team know their role and know what they're supposed to do. And I think that can't be underestimated because a lot of times you see people complaining about the lack of scholarships we use and yada, yada. But at the same time, look what happens. We use all of our scholarships. Then we have James Palmer transfer to Nebraska, and he wants more playing time. And now he's doing very well at Nebraska. And he looked good at Miami too, don't get me wrong. But a lot of players and kids of this generation are, I don't want to use the word entitled or try to hurt my own generation because I am only 22. But at the same time, they want to play right away, and that's just what they want to do. That comes down to seeing so many kids go to the NBA after 1 year. That comes down to a variety of different things on why they want to play right away. And because they want to play right away, that ends up, if you use all these scholarships, we just had to redshirt a junior big man, If you use all these scholarships, you're going to have kids on the bench who grow more and more frustrated throughout the year because they aren't playing, and that's going to hurt team chemistry. Now, with our team chemistry, we have 7 guys deep, and we have 2 guys working their way into the rotation. So I think everyone knows their own role, and I really do think we're going to upset and surprise a lot of people this year.
Yeah, and that's a great point. A lot of people, you see millions and millions of dollars in front of you. That's why. I mean, look at Huel at the time. Look at him last year talking like he tried to go pro because he saw the money there. And you see Bruce Brown go pro. And I honestly think Bruce Brown should have come back one more year. He goes in the second round instead of being a lottery pick. Or it was the beginning of the second round, right?
Beginning of the second round.
Yeah, and so I think a lot of people, they see the money and they want to play. You want to get as much playing time as you can get, because realistically, if you have one good year, that could set you up for life. And a lot of these people think that they're that good. So I mean, I don't blame a lot of the players to do that, but I also I understand why Coach L doesn't want to just be throwing scholarships at everybody. And now we have this whole the whole case behind us where Coach L is clear from it, and we don't have that hanging over our heads this year. And I think that's going to also help with recruiting and everything coming up. And maybe we didn't do a great job recruiting this year, but we have to remember too, we have Zach Johnson, we have Anthony Mack, and we have Cameron McGusty, who can't play this year, but that is a huge transfer coming from Oklahoma for next year. So in the transfer market, Coach L does a very, very good job.
Very good. And he's had success with it. Sheldon Mack plays for the Wizards, played for the Wizards, and also Angel Rodriguez also played a little bit in the NBA, now in the G League. He knows how to get the most out of transfers and recruits, which is going to help us. So you see a guy like Miles Wilson get dismissed from our team. Some people are thinking he was probably going to play a lot this year, but Coach L, you got to trust the people with the inside information most of the time, and trust what Coach L has built. And he's not dismissing a guy like Miles Wilson for no reason. So if he's dismissing him, he thinks that not only can our team withhold that rather than just suspend him, but he also feels that this kid clearly hasn't been dedicated enough to what he wants and that we can do it without him. And sometimes it's a cost-benefit analysis, but sometimes that's what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you look at this schedule, and I mean, we might as well let's talk a little bit about that. We're projected 10th. What do you think? And in every one of Coach L's years, whatever his projection is, he's always finished at least one spot better, which is crazy. So what are you thinking when you look at this team realistically? Obviously, I don't think we're going to win the ACC because you still have Duke, you still have Virginia, you still have North Carolina. But where do you think we can land, and what do you think the sky is for this team?
I think the sky is 4. I think that's everything hits. We have an amazing year. I think the sky is 4. I think we're likely to finish somewhere between 6 and 8.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking too. And I think that this is a team that's going to get into the top 25. But I think what's going to happen is I think we do take care of business out of conference. And I think you go and you play a team like FSU, who maybe has fallen apart, and right now they're number 17. That's a rivalry game, and maybe you drop that one at FSU, and that's the first game you drop. And suddenly you go from 17 in the country. Maybe FSU has 3 or 4 losses or 5 losses by that point because they're kind of underachieving because, like you said, Leonard Hamilton is still there. Yeah. And you drop that game and all of a sudden it's like, wow, Miami plays finally one decent team and they can't pull off the win. And, you're always hovering around 18 to 25 and maybe even drop out of the rankings here and there. But I think that this is a team, as long as you can keep the bad losses out, and this is what I said last year before the season, it was all about avoiding the bad loss. If you can keep the bad losses out, then you can afford to have some losses to mediocre ACC teams. You can't lose to Pitt, but you can afford to drop a game here and there to a Georgia Tech, or like we did last year. Somebody like that. You don't want to see it, but it's something that you can afford as long as you avoid them all from these lower conference teams.
I agree 100%. I agree 100%. And touching back just on the transfer thing, you see another player from Broward County, Hanif Cheatham, who went to Marquette, scored 12 points a game. I think his field goal percentage was above 50% his first year. A freshman going to Marquette and scoring 12 points a game is very, very good. And then his sophomore year comes around and he doesn't have that same type of success. And he leaves and he transfers to Florida Gulf Coast. And that's the type of reasoning why I don't think Coach L should be looked upon. He needed to transfer because he needed the ball more in order to make the NBA. So that's why he went to Florida Gulf Coast. But then I don't think you could disparage Coach L for when a James Palmer transfers to Nebraska and he does very well, because at then he can't control the situation. He can only do as much as he can.
Yeah, and it's very much like what happened with Kevin Ware after he had the horrific injury with Louisville, and then he transferred to Georgia State, I believe, right? It was Georgia State.
I think it was Georgia State.
And he wanted more playing time. He wanted to be able to be the big fish in the small pond, so everybody could look at his numbers and be like, "Oh my God, he put up 40 a game or whatever." And I don't know how well it worked out for him, but that's something that people are always looking at. You're looking sometimes to transfer to a little bit smaller of a school, and I think Miami will always be better than Nebraska in basketball, at least as long as Coach L is there.
Always.
So that's something that James Palmer wants to go there. I understand why he's doing it, but I think it's one of those things where you have to just let Coach L kind of shape the team the way he wants to shape it. He seems to always do a good job. Well, we've made the tournament 3 straight years now for the first time in school history. Make it this year, that'd be 4 straight years. I know we haven't made it to the Elite 8 yet, and we've had some disappointing losses. The Marquette loss was brutal. We lost to Nova the 1 year though, and Nova goes on to win the entire thing. So I think that this is a team that's young, and I think that a lot of them probably believe in what Coach L was preaching because last year it worked. And I'd like to see a little bit more speed from the offense, but I think that's something that's going to come just with the players that we have and the talent. I think there's so much more talent right now because of how much guys have developed than there was last year, even with Lonnie Walker and when Bruce Brown was healthy.
And that speed will also come from, if we're going to shoot 25 threes a game, we need our guards to hit. Dejan hit 41% from 3 last year, and Chris Lykes hit 34% from 3. So if Chris Lykes can improve 2 to 3%, and Dejan could keep his percentage at 41%, or even go up maybe up to like 42 or 43% when he increases his quantity, then we'll be able to really get this offense rolling.
Yeah, absolutely. And if he wants it to be run through the 3 ball, Vasiljevic is going to be huge. He's going to be huge this season, and I think that he's ready for it. Though I think last year Vasiljevic, his role was too big last year because of the injury to Brown. Vasiljevic he was playing a lot more than I think fits his style. Because if you're going to be just really throwing up threes all game, he's not Steph Curry. He can't just be standing back there, for 40 minutes throwing up threes. He needs to be more of a role player, and I think his role was just too big last year. Exactly. So I think that's something to look for this year.
I agree 100%.
Yeah. So, I mean, other than that, if we're looking at going to the tournament, I think that's something that this team should be able to do. I really don't even think it should be a question. Playing in as strong of a conference as the ACC is, as long as you can finish in the top half, which I do think that they'll do. And even if they finish 8th, I think the ACC probably gets 8. We see how good the ACC is year after year. And I know that they didn't have a great tournament last year, but they still will always get the benefit of the doubt. It's like the SEC in football. You can, as long as you're losing to ACC teams, nobody's really going to bat an eye.
Exactly. Yeah, I definitely believe this is a tournament team. Believe it's a tournament team. And we also just scrimmaged USF, and apparently Chris Lykes had 24 points, and Wardenberg and Vasiljevic also played very well too.
There you go.
A little note.
Was that game after the Barry one? Sorry, I missed that one.
I believe that was after the bit.
Okay.
I'm not sure, but I do know it happened within the last 2 weeks.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I think that this is a team that's I think that there's a lot of potential here. I think that maybe it's a little crazy to say the highest seed we've gotten, or we had the 2 seed the 1 year, but normally we always end up like around that 3 to 6 line. It feels like that's where we fall generally. I mean, we were the 8 seed and we got blown out in the first game. I forget who Michigan State. We got destroyed in that 1 year. But I think that this is another team that should fall between that 3 and 6 line. And I know that the expectations aren't that high, but I think that's when Coach L kind of does his best, because people aren't going to be keeping a close eye on it. He can keep his guys focused rather than having them be in the public spotlight the entire season. I think that this is a team that, if you finish 4th place in the ACC, and I know last year they finished 3rd place and they got a 6th seed, but they also had 10 losses, and this year's ACC is better. I think that if you finish 4th in the ACC, you're probably looking at that 3 to 4 line this year.
Yeah, and if we do that, then we got to avoid that dreadful 6-11 matchup where so many of the 11 seeds are able to upset 6 seeds, and you run into a team like Loyola Chicago that ends up making the Final Four. So that would really help our positioning as well, too.
Yeah, and I didn't really get to talk about it last year because our season ended right there. But when Stefan and I did the tournament preview, and I think even before the tournament bracket came out, I had posted a comment on Canes Insight and said, "We don't want a team like Loyola Chicago. We don't want them." Because I've been kind of following them. I like following the mid-major teams. I like their stories, and I think that it's always fun to see which ones are on the bubble. So we really don't want Loyola Chicago. Who do we get? As I'm watching Selection Sunday and it comes down, I'm like, we're going to get Loyola Chicago. Here it is. Of course it happens.
Yeah.
And it was the nightmare first round matchup because that's the team that was older. You know, they're ready to win, and they're actually ranked. I'm using quotes here, ranked ahead of us because they've gotten more votes than us in both polls, the coaches and the AP poll. In the AP poll, they're actually 26. They're three votes behind Washington, and in the coaches, they're 27. So Nebraska is actually ranked in the coaches poll this year. As we just said, Miami will always be better than Nebraska. They start the season ranked 25 in the coaches poll.
Yeah, that's a little interesting note, but I really do think that this team is prepared for that. And also, just to kind of segue into something else, Vernon Carey just finished his official visit at UNC this weekend, and I believe that's his last visit. So now he has a decision coming up, and everything I've heard from just people around Miami, not specifically University of Miami basketball, but the South Florida basketball scene, they all say they've been saying Duke for like the last 4 or 5 months, but time changes everything. And I do believe if he doesn't go to Duke, it would be Miami. But if I had to bet on anything, I would bet on Duke.
Yeah,
that's just my 2 cents.
If you can somehow land him at Miami, that's a game
changer.
Exactly. That would offset the not getting anybody really, not getting anybody new this year with the recruiting. Because it was quiet this offseason. It was really, really quiet between March and now. And I know Cameron McGusty was huge, but that's for the future. And a lot of Canes fans want now, as we're seeing with the football team right now. Everybody wants now because this is a program that is used to winning. I mean, it's a championship program, and maybe not the basketball team, but now that Larrañaga has given us some hope, we're expecting to be at that level all the time. And yeah, landing somebody like Vernon Carey would be huge.
Yeah, and we already got Isaiah Wong, who's a very nice combo guard out of Pennsylvania, committed, and we have Anthony Walker, who's a 6'8", 205-pound big man out of New Hampshire. So getting Vernon Carey to go with that, not as only he's a legacy, but his game is kind of similar to Zach Randolph in a sense where he could bang down low. He might not be as strong and as built as Zach Randolph was coming out of high school and coming into the league. I don't know if he went to college or not, but he's someone who could step out, hit the mid-range jumper, and also do 1 to 2 dribbles, do a little mid-post move, and hit a hook shot or hit whatever he needs to hook in that mid-game as well, too. He has a very refined game for someone his age, and you see that's why he's ranked number 2 in the country.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why you have to hope that you look at Duke, how well they recruited this year, and that has a lot to do with why they're ranked. I believe, what are they? They're number 3 in the AP poll.
Yeah.
They're number 4 actually in the AP poll. 3 in the coaches. But, when you look at that, it's a lot of it is recruiting. And, Coach K used to be, the Grayson Allen is always there. He always has that 1 4-year guy. But It seems like he's adopted this one and done type mentality. And, Vernon Carey might be that guy who decides to go to Duke and be one and done rather than go to Miami and try to be one and done, because it is easier at Duke in reality.
And I think it's just, I don't think it's a sense of Vernon Carey not knowing that he could, wherever he's going to get drafted the same way, I think, in my opinion, if he goes to Miami or Duke. But it's just the legacy that Duke has and how many players they've put in the league. And recently you've seen success. You see like Jason Tatum, and even though we get a Lonnie Walker and we get a Bruce Brown, you just see so many Duke guys going one and done right now. Now you have Zion and RJ Barrett, who might be the number 1 and the number 2 pick in the next NBA draft. And all that allure and the basketball culture in Durham kind of tempts people to believe that way too. And now you see John Calipari. He also just went into an in-home visit with Vernon Carey. So everyone's pressing for this kid and everyone wants this kid. But we've been on him since 8th grade, and his father went to the University of Miami too. He's not going to force him to make any decisions, but he's also very conscious of all these things as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what a lot of it comes down to is the style of basketball at Duke and at Kentucky is just more pro ready than the style of basketball that Miami plays a lot of the time. Miami is a team that seems to win these games scoring in the 60s a lot of the time. They play more solid defense. They force turnovers. They'll work the shot clock down. There's not a lot of pace to that offense. And I think, maybe this year with the talent that they have and with the types of players they have, if you can get that pace going, you might start to attract somebody like Vernon Carey a little bit more, who starts to see, okay, I can put some numbers up at that program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I will say one of the things that I do believe is working in our favor is Jeff Capel went to Pittsburgh to take the head coaching job. And Jeff Capel was the person who really connected with a lot of these high school recruits and it's not that he got them to Duke, but the assistant coach does most of the heavy lifting for recruiting. So Jeff Capel was their James Coley. Jeff Capel was Will Muschamp's T-Rob in that kind of sense, that he really connected with these players and they wanted to play for Capel and Coach K, not just Coach K by himself.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, man. Well, I mean, if you want to make like a final prediction on this season, and then we'll get out of here. We're almost, we're getting close to the time there. And,
okay. Final prediction for the season: finish 5th in the ACC, Sweet 16.
Sweet 16. Yeah, I'm feeling like this is probably going to be a 5 seed. That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that this team probably ends up as about a 5 seed going into the tournament, probably like 5th or 6th in the ACC. I'm not completely sold on Syracuse yet. I want to see what they're going to look like. And so maybe 5th or 6th in the ACC. And I think that this is finally the year that we get through the conference play without a bad loss. And if we play Seton Hall and Seton Hall beats us and Seton Hall's having a really good year, I wouldn't consider that a bad loss. But I think that this is finally the year where we don't sit there and go, oh my God, we did it again. We lost to that team. So I agree. I think that this is a team that could go Sweet 16. I think that, if you get the right matchups, you saw last year, the tournament was just mayhem. You had a team like Nevada go all the way to the Elite Eight, and now here's Nevada. They lost to Loyola Chicago before the Elite Eight, but they had the lead on them. And then I look at them now; they're ranked like number 7 in the nation coming into the season. So I think Miami could maybe pull off, maybe a Sweet 16 Elite Eight type run. I think that's the sky for this team. I'm not thinking that this is the team that's like, oh, Final Four, unless they really do start clicking and you just see something that nobody was really expecting.
I agree. For them to make a deeper run than Sweet 16, you would have to see Zach, Chris, and DeJuan. I believe those are going to be our 3 leaders and our 3 best players on the team this year. They would have to take their game to a whole nother level. And I've seen DeJuan and Zach do it in Norland. We lost to Norland two or 3 years in a row, both of the times in the playoffs when we were in 6A. So I've seen these guys are leaders, and they've built that into them. Norland is one of the best basketball programs down in South Florida. So they can do it, but my gut says Sweet 16, which is something we haven't done in a long time too, and that's not something to snare at as well, It's very, very good.
Absolutely. Yeah, making the Sweet 16. I mean, making it to the second weekend of the tournament is never easy. You see that all the time. So, yeah, I think that would be great. And, now, football season is pretty much over. Basketball season's beginning. So we're going to have some basketball coverage coming out.
Yeah.
With this Lehigh game, we'll be covering all of these non-conference games, even these smaller ones. And maybe we'll have some podcasts coming up. We're still working. I'm still talking to Stefan about maybe what we're going to do with that. But, there'll be basketball coverage coming, and hopefully this is a team to be really, really excited about, and we can wash the taste of the last couple months out of our mouth and be ready to go and achieve this year.
Yep. And anyone that wants to follow me on Twitter at 96LILBURD, you can do so. Just giving a little shout out to myself. Got to get my followers up.
Hey, there you go. Hey, I just started up my Twitter account, and I'm at 48 followers. So anybody who wants to hear me complain about a lot of things, Phil_Wood_Jr. That's it. That'll make Stefan laugh too. So, but anyway, all right, Kyle. Well, thanks a lot for this, and this is fun, and we'll see what's coming up in the future.
Yeah, we'll do it again for sure.